Thank you, everybody. We should have had a teacher up here. I don't think that anybody else would be better at settling down a group of 800 people. Welcome to the 11th annual Voices for Humanity Luncheon, benefiting the Holocaust Center for Humanity here in Seattle. There's over 850 people gathered here today. Over 200 of you are here for the first time. Thank you so much for coming out. My name is Arik Cohen. If you were here last year, I was explaining how I was getting more involved with the center as a new legacy speaker. If you haven't done so yet, if you could please take the Change Begins With Me stickers that you got and place them on. One of the great honors I've had over the last year is to take that to schools around the state of Washington. I've had a chance to talk to students across the state, 7 different schools. I just started speaking in January. I spoke at the new center that's been built. I've spoken at community events. I've spoken to nearly 1,000 kids. And I've told the story of my 4 grandparents, all 4 of which are survivors. It's been a humbling experience for me. My grandmother was a teacher. My mother is a teacher. My wife is a teacher. This has been my first opportunity to get into the classroom, to really interact with the kids as an educator, and really bring a story to life. And I've seen the impact I can have on them, and you'll hear more and more about that impact that the center has, and that the speakers have, and that you have on all these students' lives. The message that we have at the center is very simple every day. 3 things, 3 simple things. Educate, inspire, and take action. Education starts easy for us. We work with the teachers. Over 150 teachers were trained at teaching seminars in the last year. When I speak to the teachers, when I go out to the schools, I hear from them about how it would be impossible to generate the Holocaust education that they do for their students without the resources that the center provides, whether it's the lesson planning and the teaching that happens during the seminars, or whether it's via the trunks. If you came in via the green room, you saw one of the trunks there. Your generosity made it possible to have 19 trunks go out to over 150 schools, and 9,000 students were impacted by the books, the DVDs, the posters, the lesson plans that are in those trunks. Inspire. I thought that my job as a speaker was to go out and inspire the kids. Boy, was I wrong. My job as a speaker was to go out and be inspired by the kids. I was not necessarily the most attentive student early in the morning, but when I come and speak at schools first thing in the morning, they're all sitting there eagerly waiting for the knowledge and the stories that I can share. They stay after school voluntarily to come listen to survivors come and speak. And they ask questions that show they are incredibly engaged, incredibly inspired, and incredibly moved by the stories that they hear. I keep hearing from students that my grandparents' stories made the Holocaust personal to them. It's a set of stories they had never heard before, and it's one that really impacted them and inspired them. I also get inspired by seeing all the great entries to the Writing, Art, and Film contest every year. You saw some of the wonderful entries outside in the green room. It's amazing the impact that these kids have, the impact and how they inspire us. It all adds up to thousands of kids who have made a decision based on the learnings that they had here that they need to stand up. They need to stand up for tolerance, stand up for each other, and really internalize the learnings that they got from the center and use it to make a better life for themselves. In the last year, speakers have spoken to 20,000 people around the community, around the state, and we expect this year about 15,000 people to visit the new museum. 15,000 people in the new museum. Looking at all of you, I think our estimates are a little low because I'm assuming all of you guys are going to want to show up there. But we hope that you guys will be among the first visitors there. I am very proud to follow in the footsteps of the survivors that started really the Holocaust education and are courageously still telling their stories. At this time, I'd like to ask all of the survivors, liberators, and rescuers that are here in attendance today and their families to stand up, for they are the inspiration for me and for all of us here. So my promise to you for today is simple. Only 3 things are going to happen. You are going to learn. You are going to be educated. You are going to be inspired by the students and the teachers that you meet today. And you will join me in taking action to support the center. So at this time, I'd like to thank our generous sponsors, our Voices for Humanity presenting partners, Melbourne Tower and George Earlbaum and Mimi Jensen. Our benefactors, Comcast, NBC Universal, the Loeb Family Charitable Foundation, and Richard and Evelyn Gumpert. Our patrons, Judy and Krine de Jonge, Naomi and John Newman, Alpha Graphics, Alan Steinman and Diane Siegel Steinman for Bader Martin, Coastal Transportation, Arik Cohen and Rebecca Chestnut Cohen, Robert Fry for Lakeside Advisors, Hal and Inga Marcus, the Simon Family Trust and Nova Fisheries, and Janet Lindstrom Turpin. You can find out about more of our wonderful sponsors in the program that you have in front of you, and you can see the impact that they have on all the students and all the people around Washington State. I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome some of our elected and appointed officials. Ed Murray, the Mayor of Seattle. A couple Seattle City Council members, Mike O'Brien and Tom Rasmussen. Marcy Maxwell, the Senior Policy Advisor on Education in Washington State. And David Frocht, Washington State Senator. We also have a number of honored guests here from the Kent School District. Dr. Calvin Watts, the superintendent. Chris Loftus, Executive Director of Communications and School Community Partnerships. Agda Burchard, the Kent School District board member and their legislative representative. And lastly, but not leastly, we have Teresa Indelik Davis, the Honorary Consul for the Republic of Poland here in Seattle. It's now my privilege and honor to introduce Seattle's Mayor Ed Murray. Mayor Murray has been a friend and supporter of the center way back to his state legislator days. We're very proud that he is a member of our board and here to speak to us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you and welcome everybody. I want to say how proud I am that just in a month that the Holocaust Museum and Education Center will open here in Seattle. It really is an opportunity for Seattle once again to express who we are as a people and what our values are. You know, I know that this museum has been in planning for many, many years because I've talked with many of you over those many, many years. But I think it is fortuitous that it will be opening this year. Right now, we are experiencing the largest displacement of humans since the Second World War. We only have to look at the news and in our newspapers to see the tragedy of refugees and of persecution. And I think the fact that we are focused on opening the Holocaust Center at this point is pretty significant. Because what the Holocaust Center means for me is looking not just at the Holocaust, but the other atrocities that happen and continue to happen, and using those as a teaching moment. This center takes the most difficult moment in our history and uses it as a positive tool to offer hope to young people. And I have been so impressed over the years as those young people come forward from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, and from all religious beliefs to talk about what they learned from the survivors and talk about how they're going to change their own communities and change this city. You know, I first came to this lunch after a visit to Auschwitz several years ago. It left me, and I talked to many of you about this in the earlier remarks, it left me, well, not in a great place. And then Senator Ken Jacobson invited me to this lunch. And what caught me was that connection to young people, that connection to hope. It's why it's the only board I serve on, so I encourage you to be part of this very hopeful story as we prepare for the opening of Seattle Center and contribute and participate, because this center is changing young people, and those young people are changing our future. Yes. As the philosopher Albert Camus said, perhaps we cannot prevent this world from being a world in which children are tortured, but we can reduce the number of children who are tortured. And if you don't do this thing, who else will? Thank you, Holocaust Center.
Bring it down. I'm Dee Simon, the Executive Director of the Holocaust Center. Thank you all so much for coming. Really, thank you. Thank you to our generous sponsors and those who gave matching donations today. Thank you. I'd like to take just a moment to mourn the passing of several of the speakers in our Speakers Bureau this year. Magda Shalom, Marty Byrne, and Fanny Wald. Fanny and Magda served on our board and also were one of the founders of our center. Magda Shalom was a dear friend, and she told her story to thousands of students. She told it with her heart, she told it with dignity, and she told it with grace about her survival in Auschwitz. She definitely transformed lives for decades. We're very grateful to her work. It's my honor now to present our annual Voices for Humanity Organization Award to the M.J. Murdoch Charitable Trust. We came to them when we began building our center, and we looked to them for help, but they gave us so much more than financial support. They gave us advice and guidance along the way. I'd like to present our annual Voices for Humanity Organization Award to the M.J. Murdoch Charitable Trust. Jan Kennedy will speak on their behalf.
It is indeed a thrill to be in the presence of you all, especially this organization, the founders and the board, and in particular, the executive director. Dee is a wonderful woman, as you all know. It's also a thrill to see an organization which was formed from a very poignant experience in a certain place and in a certain place in history, and have the evidence of that pain and suffering turn into something that is so positive for all of us. And it's a rare privilege to meet an organization, especially the people in the organization, who have done such marvelous work and have such great influence across the state, perhaps beyond. So it is a privilege for us to, at Murdoch Charitable Trust, to meet such an organization, and I am indeed the beneficiary of knowing several of you up close, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Herb and Lucy Prezan will now present our Voices for Humanity individual recognition.
Carl and Joanne, we are delighted and honored to present you with the Holocaust Center's Voices of Humanity Award. With this award, the center recognizes your extraordinary generosity and leadership in the development of its new education center and museum.
As close friends, we're particularly pleased in that you demonstrate the importance of educating all people, especially students, in the need for tolerance and respect among peoples. We appreciate your continuing support for the mission of the Holocaust Center for Humanity.
Thank you. Carl and I would like to thank you for this nice recognition. We have always been proud to support the work of the Holocaust Center, but it is an honor for us to be a partner, helping create this important new community institution. It is truly a wonderful destination for students, locals, and visitors in Seattle. It is a dream that has come to its fruition, our own Holocaust Museum and Tolerance Center, the only one in the Pacific Northwest. Thank you, Dee, for you and your team have done to inspire students through Holocaust education to create a more tolerant world. To everyone here today in this room, please join us and personally make a meaningful gift to the center, one that you will remember. Thank you.
We forgot to mention AT&T, and they're out here today. Thank you so much for your support. Today, I'd like to start my story with my grandmother. She was raised in an orphanage near the German border in Czechoslovakia under terrible, terrible conditions. At the age of 17, she ran away. She later married and had a little baby girl. My grandmother swore to keep her daughter safe. And unlike her own experience as an orphan, she would always be there to protect her daughter. When World War II came to Czechoslovakia, her daughter, at the age of 14, was deported to the Theresienstadt concentration camp. There, still only a child, she endured slave labor, subhuman living conditions, beating, and starvation. Despite my grandmother's greatest efforts, she could not protect her daughter. After the war, my mother and grandmother immigrated to Israel, the one place that took them in, the one place they felt they would be safe. Frida married, and there she had her own daughter, me. Then Frida moved again, this time to America. Here she promised she would shield her daughter from the evils of the world. So when I was growing up, my mother never shared her Holocaust experience. But even in the United States, we experienced anti-Semitism and racism. And now I too am a mother, and I want more than anything to keep my daughter safe. What my grandmother and mother taught me is that we cannot protect our children by looking the other way or whitewashing history. There's a term, universe of obligation. It's a way of thinking about people to whom we feel responsible. In the Holocaust, 6 million Jews and millions of other victims fell out of the world's universe of obligation. Today, millions of refugees are not being taken, no one's taking responsibility for millions of refugees throughout the world. To keep our children safe, we must work towards a world that understands that our universe of obligation falls beyond our front door, beyond our ethnicities, and beyond our religion. We must begin this work. We must begin this work with education, and we must begin it right here. By teaching the lessons of the Holocaust, we're not shying away from history, we're using it. We're using it as a case study, as a lens through which we can teach students about bigotry, hatred, indifference. There is no other genocide with as many resources, as many documented personal stories, and as many perspectives through which we can understand and study our world today. For over 25 years, our center has worked by giving teachers, speakers, and trunks, curriculum, teacher trainings, and programs throughout the Northwest for free. Holocaust education is not mandated in our state, and there is no state funding. Without the center, our teachers would not have the resources they need, and today you're going to hear from one of those teachers. Over the years, we've seen the impact this has had on students. Through their writing, through their art, and through the questions they ask us, many of our teachers have told us that after studying a Holocaust lesson, their students' grades improve. Their students are more engaged. They're more engaged in their education because we've reached them in a passionate, human way. We want to build on that success. We want to continue that success with students. And because of generous donors, this year we're forming a new student education leadership board, where a group of students are going to get together and figure out how to get other students who want to continue their education and take meaningful action engaged. It'll be the next step for many of our students. We're opening new opportunities with partnerships, such as the Seattle Police Department, the Seattle Children's Theater in their production of Hannah's Suitcase, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and other organizations working to build bridges of understanding within their organizations and in our community. And we're so glad that we can be there to help. You came here to support and to learn about the center. But today, I propose that we do more than that. Today, I propose that we celebrate one hell of a year. This year, we're opening, as you've heard, the new Henry and Sandra Friedman Holocaust Center for Humanity. Yes. In January, we moved our offices into this space. And although we're not going to be open to the public until October, we couldn't keep students away. Students came from every corner of this state, from classrooms. Their classrooms came from corners. We didn't even know the places they came from. They drove over 3 hours, some of them, to come to our center. In the summer, the Boys and Girls Club and other campers from the SJCC and other groups came, even though we told them, we're not open yet. To build on what we've created, our main focus continues to be outreach, serving the greatest number of students with the resources and programs of excellence, students in Anchorage and Boise, Portland and Moses Lake, Tacoma, and right here in Seattle. We're building this center so that we can do everything we need to do to provide our students with the resources that they need. Thank you for all of you who contributed your money and your heart to build our new center. Next year, or actually for the next 3 years, we're going to be building on our exhibit. We invite you to come by, become a museum member, join the Capital Campaign. It's not over yet. I began my talk today with a story about my family, about 3 generations of women who desperately wanted to protect their children. I'm asking you to join us as we create a world where all of our children consider each other within their universe of obligation. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Penny Raines, who is just one of the many students you'll meet today and one of just many of the thousands we reach each year.
Hi, my name is Penny Raines. I'm 17 years old and a homeschool high schooled senior. I want to thank the Holocaust Center and everyone involved for sponsoring the Writing, Art, and Film contest so that I could express my passion and my education in my art entry. I have studied the Holocaust for the past 5 years, and during the course of writing my novel, I had no idea that when I first began my research of the enormity and how far-reaching the devastation was during the 1930s and 40s. In addition to absorbing every scrap of information I could get my hands on, books such as Dr. Miklos Naisli's Auschwitz, A Doctor's Eyewitness Account, left a deep impression on my soul. I remember very clearly watching scenes from the movie Out of the Ashes. I was utterly horrified. I couldn't sleep. I was desperate to do something. Anything. What, though? There was nothing I could do about events that took place over 60 years before I was born. I couldn't go back and rescue those people. I couldn't stop that genocide. The price people paid was so high. I wanted to make sure everyone knew about the Holocaust. So I told everyone about it who would listen. The Holocaust has made a big impact on me, and I believe that all kids and adults should learn about it. I believe that once you know about it, it influences how you treat people and how you see the world. In my painting for the Center's Writing, Art, and Film contest, I wanted to express the pain and the sorrow of millions in a single man's face. I also convey the desperation and the helplessness that I personally felt during my studies. I have come to realize that I only have today. I cannot rewrite history, but I can change the future. We all can. I wait tables, I paint, and I write stories. Everybody has a circle of influence. Do what you can with what you have. A single act of kindness can change the world. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Allie Hancock and I teach 8th grade social studies and language arts up north in Mount Vernon at Mount Baker Middle School. I first want to thank you for making it possible to teach the Holocaust in such an accessible and immersive way. Here's a few things that happened to me last year. This past February, I was able to attend a teaching conference at the sensational new center that they put on for us, and not me personally, but teachers and my colleagues. It was amazing. It was just absolutely incredible. And then I got sent a trunk full of school supplies, books, DVDs, posters, lesson plans, all sent directly to my school and for free. And then Arik Cohen came from the center to speak to all of my students. Throughout our Holocaust unit, we focus on humanity, empathy, acceptance, and the culminating project that my students produce is something that they create to share what they took away from our experience together. They're able to express what they had internalized throughout our journey and show that they've realized that they have a responsibility in their lives. They have a responsibility to make informed decisions and be an upstander rather than a bystander that we talk about in class. I now want you to meet one of my former students, Jeremiah Moreno. He is a freshman at Mount Vernon High School. And when you see him in the video in a few minutes, you will see just how important Holocaust education is to all of the students that the center supports. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeremiah Moreno, and I'm a freshman at Mount Vernon High School. Last year in the 8th grade at Mount Baker Middle School, my class studied the Holocaust with my teacher, Mrs. Hancock. This unit really changed me. It seemed so personal to me to learn about so many people who died for no reason. Arik Cohen also came to my school and told the incredible story of his 4 grandparents who survived the Holocaust. I really felt their stories become a major part of my life. Thank you, Arik. Your grandparents are my heroes. One night during the unit, I was sitting at dinner and I looked at my brother and I thought to myself, I could lose my whole family for no reason, simply just because we're Mexican Americans or Christians. I later began to work on a rap to express my feelings about the Holocaust for my project. You'll see it in just a few minutes. Along with stories of other kids who are just like me. I hope it is as meaningful to you as it was to me. Thank you.
Arriving to a gruesome scene.
Advising of the active shooter, multiple people down.
I come from Somalia. When I was a sophomore in high school, I wrote about studying the Holocaust and how I identified with the survivors. I've really learned to stand against genocide and injustice. This fall, I'll start at Stanford University as a junior. I'm so grateful for the center and all the support they offer local teachers and students like me.
Our goal in teaching the Holocaust, one of our goals is to help students realize that you have a choice every single day. Do you want to be a perpetrator? Do you want to be a bystander? Do you want to be a victim, or do you want to be an upstander? And inevitably, every single one of them wants to be that upstander. They see the reflections of themselves in these stories of kids that have survived this and people that helped them. And they connect to it on such a deep, powerful level.
Work makes you free is what it says on the gates of Auschwitz. Or was it freedom when the Nazis burned and shot little kids? You gotta make it personal to understand why. As you remember all the innocent lives that were lost, you always remember, you'll never forget, you'll always keep in mind the Holocaust.
To be here today is a dream come true. I wanted to capture the sorrow of millions in one man's face. I was inspired by how even one small act of kindness could save a life. And I believe that a voice, no matter how small it may seem, is important.
Making choices! Mount Baker Middle School has a really diverse population. Because we're a Title I school and 68% of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch, we have very limited resources in what we're able to use. And I rely heavily, almost solely, on the Holocaust Center here in Seattle. My first year teaching, I was told, language arts usually teaches the Holocaust. End of story. And so I immediately went onto the website and saw these fantastic resources that are available to teachers. And when I clicked on it, I envisioned walking to my principal and asking for money, which I knew we didn't have. And I saw it free. These trunks are free, and I could not believe that I could get a class set of books for my kids to read for a whole month. They come with artifacts and posters and DVDs and help for me as their teacher. And I would not have been able to provide a unit for my kids without the help of the Holocaust Center.
So the 4 men that they took at that point, one of them is my grandfather. All 4 of my grandparents were survivors. My grandmother went through Auschwitz labor camp, was involved in a death march, and then was liberated by the Russians. My grandfather was sent to Buchenwald. You want to catch one more? How do I tell the story to my kids? I have 3 kids. They're all named after their great-grandparents. I've been constantly amazed at how engrossed they are in the stories, how good the questions are, how much it causes them to think. The main thing that drives me, I think, on keeping on doing it is the feedback I get from the students. They separated men and women separately. They immediately wanted to figure out, who will live and who won't.
they were thrilled. When you have a real person standing there saying, my grandma and grandpa, that's something they identify with. But the fact that the Holocaust Center offers that for free to our schools, it's an awesome, awesome gift.
The center has been able to put me in situations where I get to tell a story that I will probably continue telling for the next 40 years.
When Hitler conquered Poland, I was 1 year old when this happened. This was in Warsaw. I lived there, I was born there. My mom survived by luck, strength, and wits. For 60-some years, I kept silent about my Holocaust background. And I think I was doing this simply for security, for my personal emotional security. And then 5 years ago, I saw that my story has value and that it can add some life to the slogan, never again. And I started speaking to younger audiences. The only religion I really have is the golden rule.
Cool. He talks about the golden rule where you treat others how you want to be treated. But what can I do? I can't do anything big because I'm still just a kid. If there's a kid sitting alone during lunch, if I sit next to that person, I can at least put a smile on their face.
In this world, you have to be for something to do any good, not against something. And the Nazis were against just about everything and everybody except themselves.
In my 6th grade year, I was in a really negative situation, and George Elbaum came to our school. Having him come really changed my life. Before I was an angry kid, I only really saw stuff that was stopping me in life, and after I met George Elbaum and saw what he had gone through, I changed from a kid that only saw things were going to stop him to obstacles that he could overcome if he tried hard. I learned to really value the family that I had and love the time I spent with them and make sure they know that. It's really helped me connect with other people.
And I've gotten so many letters from the contacts Holocaust Center has established for me. I'm increasing my contributions this year because I want to support what you're doing and I want to help grow that.
And at the end of the day, that's why we're choosing to teach the Holocaust, to help them reach out to one another, even in very small ways. It doesn't have to be a really big monumental gesture, being that upstander instead of the bystander. That's what we're looking for.
I am so glad the Holocaust Center brought George Elbaum to our school to speak because it changed my life forever.
I made a difference.
And I would not have been able to provide a unit for my kids without the help of the Holocaust Center.
Hi, my name is Michael Kimball, and this year I am attending Federal Way High School as a freshman. I was in 6th grade when my class started learning about the Holocaust, and as it happened, I was there for one of the first times that George Elbaum spoke and shared his story with students like me. I just want to tell you all again, I can't stress this enough. George Elbaum changed my life forever. Every hardship and every challenge that I face in my life, I go back to that meeting with him when I first heard his story. Things weren't going so well at home at the time. I resented my situation. And I took that out on everybody around me, the people I loved, and this was all because I felt I'd been dealt a bad hand in life, when I really didn't know what that phrase meant. After hearing George, a blindfold that had rested on my eyes for my whole life fell off. Family, friends, teachers, they were no longer a wall that was blocking my success, but they were gateways that were leading to it. Right then, I decided that I needed to reach out to people. I needed to show them the limitless possibilities of life. The limitless possibilities of life that 6 million Jews did not have, and so many others. Seeing things as I do now, I truly believe that I could help make the world a better place every single day. George Elbaum was there when I was falling, and his testimony is what lifted me out of a dark pit that I was falling down. In this, I am so very grateful for him. I am so grateful and lucky to have met him, to have heard his story, and to count him among my dearest of friends. Thank you all for what you do, and thank you, George, for what you've done.
Thank you, Mr. Elbaum, for deciding to tell your story to kids like us. We are so lucky that you came to Kent Mountain View Academy, and I've always remembered your story about the sugar cube and how much you like sweets. So, here is a basket of sweets from all of us.
Thank you all. I first met Michael and Danielle about 3 years ago when I spoke at their school, the Kent Mountain View Academy. At that time, Michael reached to about here on me. Now I reach to about here on him. He's grown. Maybe I've shrunk, but that's life. It's a real pleasure, though, to see them, the two of them, grow to be mature and compassionate adults, young adults. And it's also a long ways from the Warsaw Ghetto to this podium and the 800 of you that are here today. You heard from the video that I was very late in telling my story about my Holocaust childhood. I never realized how deeply my story could impact the students who heard me. It makes me feel truly, truly humble, and it inspires me to keep doing, to keep talking. So thank you, Michael and Danielle, for allowing me into your hearts and allowing me to help you see a world that you can and hopefully will change. And thank you to the Holocaust Center for making it possible for me to reach out and speak to so many classes and so many students over the last 5 years. I'll be back shortly to share my story with you. Thank you.
I said, when you're done sharing your story, you can share that basket too. That looks pretty good. Hi again. I just love being up here in front of all of you. Can't keep me away. In my life, you all are the true heroes. Let me explain a little bit about why. I recently started my 3rd year of teaching, and like I said before, I was very fortunate to move into a district where the Holocaust is already a part of the 8th grade language arts curriculum. However, as I also told you, I realized very quickly that while the district supports the teaching of the Holocaust, there were no, and I mean no, resources available, and definitely no budget to purchase any additional resources. In my first year, it became immediately apparent that my students, with a very rare exception, had never even heard the word Holocaust. My school serves over 700 students. We're a minority-majority school, and we have over 63% of our students receiving free and reduced lunch. With such a large population, and the majority of my students without computers or internet at home, I feel a heavy responsibility not only to teach the Holocaust as history and honor the millions of survivors and people who perished, but to help the students navigate the complicated world that we live in today. I could not achieve any of this without the help from the Holocaust Center. This is why you are my heroes. Anyone who has a middle school student, or knows a middle school student, or was once a middle school student, knows that the most important things in life to them are talking and relationships. Yes. During our Holocaust unit, I witnessed students undergo an incredible transformation in how they relate to one another and how they talk to one another. We focus on being an upstander in life rather than just being a bystander. About supporting others regardless of their differences, learning to celebrate each other's differences, and about putting one another up rather than putting them down. In middle school, that's harder than you would think. I see students treat one another with respect. They begin to call one another out when they see an injustice. They empower one another to choose kindness, to feel the stories of the victims. And for the first time in their lives, they see the absolute worst and the absolute best in our human race. And they want to choose the best. You are my heroes. Yes, it's true. You are my heroes because you support the Holocaust Center in developing all the educational resources that I need to teach my students and could not possibly afford without you. Students like mine often cannot afford even basic school supplies, and like so many other teachers, I spend a lot of my own money helping to meet their needs. However, with your support, the Holocaust Center is able to provide amazing resources for them for free. The first time I show the different survivor testimonies in my class, we have a lot of extra Kleenex to hand out. Students are so moved by those stories. If you haven't seen one of them on the website, I would look it up. They're absolutely gripping and authentic in a way that no book or reading of an interview could offer. Kids connect, and they're changed. And while a video of a survivor testimony is moving, the center takes it one step further to help create the connections with those students. They send us speakers. Arik told his story of his 4 grandparents to over 300 students at my school this last winter. Again, priceless and free to my students because of you. I don't think saying thank you will ever be enough. With your support, my colleague and I attended the first teaching seminar at the new center and came away with practical lesson plans full of Common Core aligned lessons. Absolutely priceless, a massive book. It was absolutely unbelievable, and again, free because of you. We are also planning a class field trip this Seattle for the school year to see the new museum, which will be amazing, and an absolutely profound experience as many of my students have never been to Seattle before. I need to tell you it's complicated to teach the Holocaust and then to make it relevant to students today who hear about genocide and refugees all over the news, who know what bullying is and what it feels like. When they learn about the Holocaust, my students tell me that they want to be the person who makes the difference for others. This is what you do for our children by giving to the center, and this is why you are my heroes. I ask you today, give for all of us this year in a way you've never given. Your gift gives us opportunity. We provide the inspiration, and together we will make a difference. So, reach out in front of you and grab one of the tent centerpieces showing our students. Go on, there you go. I'm a teacher, I'm used to waiting. Pass around those pens. Make sure you share. I'd like to point out the matching changes if you open them up. We have some amazing matching challenges. Your donation of $250 will be matched dollar for dollar by a group of donors. Your donation at the $500 and $1,000 level will also be matched dollar for dollar. If you donate $500 or more, you automatically become an inaugural member of the museum as well. We want every one of you to be a hero for Holocaust education today. 100% of you. Every donation from every person here today is important to us. Of course, there are donors who can give $500, $1,000, $10,000 or more. And if you're one of these donors, we really need that, and we thank you. But if you're giving less, you are still giving. Please give whatever you can and know that it will make a difference. And again, thank you so, so, so much.
Okay. Are you going to turn me on? Okay. Okay. Oh, and you want to turn the slides on? Huh?
What's this? Oh, is this the clicker?
Yeah, the clicker. So, yeah, once you turn the first one on. Yeah. Should I do it? Hello? Hello? As I said, I'll be back to share my story with you, and I will do that right now. I am a Holocaust survivor, but only very, very recently am I able to even talk about it. I was born in what became the Warsaw Ghetto. And there's a family, I had a family of 12 people, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles. And when I was 1 year old, Hitler invaded Poland. That was 1939. Within 3 years, out of that dozen people, only my mother and I were still alive. And I saw for the next 60 years or so, I saw how my mom was tormented about the Holocaust until her dying day at the age of 90. So really for 60, 65 years, I kept a major emotional distance from the Holocaust in my childhood because I didn't want to go through what she was going through. Then 6 years ago, I saw the documentary movie, Paperclips, and I had an epiphany. That was, maybe my story has value. And that is why I'm here with you today. How to begin? 6 million is a huge number. It's very difficult to comprehend it. It's impossible to really feel its magnitude. But let's put it into human terms. 6 million Jews murdered in 5 years is about, averages to 1,200,000 every year, or 100,000 murders every month. If you consider that the population of Seattle is about 600,000, that means that every 6 months, the Nazis murdered as many Jews as everyone living in Seattle. They continued that for the 5 years of the war. That is just absolutely unbelievable. And probably if it wasn't for my mother's resourcefulness and sheer luck, we would have been among those 6 million. Now for my story and the Warsaw Ghetto. The Nazis put a wall around about 2% of the area of Warsaw, and that became the Warsaw Ghetto. Yet the Jewish population of Warsaw was 30%. So when you consider that the Nazis packed everyone in the Warsaw region into the ghetto, and yet there were, there was only room for those people who were already living there. Where did the newcomers go? Where did they live? Well, if they were lucky, if they knew someone who lived in the ghetto like we did, or had friends or family, they would move in with them. And I remember when I was about 3.5 years old, suddenly about a dozen strangers moved into our apartment. And I remember asking my mom, because they were sleeping on the couches, on the floor, in the living room, in the hallway, the kitchen, everywhere. And I remember asking my mom, who are these people? What are they doing here? And my mom said, well, they're friends. They'll be with us for a little while. And indeed, once the Nazis were satisfied that they've collected all the Jews from the entire Warsaw region and shoved them into the ghetto, they started shipping out the occupants of the ghetto and sending them to concentration camps and to the gas chambers. In addition to all the Jews that died in the concentration camps, about 80,000 Jews died in the Warsaw Ghetto, many of them right on the street, be it from starvation, from disease, from exposure to cold weather. A scene that I remember very well is shown on the next slide. Oops. The Nazi invasion of Poland. I remember this scene because I went through this almost. You see here families being led out from their courtyard through the gate, guarded by Nazi soldiers. And my grandmother and I, one time, were herded into our courtyard with our neighbors, ready for shipment. Except at the last moment, I remember seeing my mom running in through a gate like this, holding a piece of paper in her hand. That piece of paper was a document which she got from the factory director where she worked in the ghetto. And the document allowed her to keep her family in place. With this document, which was in effect a temporary permit to continue living, my mom managed to convince the Nazi officer leading that day's sweep to let us go. Had she arrived a few minutes later, it would have been too late, because my fate would probably have been like that little boy that you see right there. He probably lived about a week or two after this photograph was taken, because from here they were taken directly to the freight yards, put on freight cars and cattle cars, and shipped directly to concentration camps. And all children and older men and women, or weaker ones, were almost immediately sent to the gas chambers. So if my mom had arrived a few minutes later, I wouldn't be here today. What happened after this? Well, my mom was a very, very smart woman. She was a young attorney before the war. And she realized sooner than most people what was the fate of everyone that was being shipped out. She decided to and managed to smuggle herself and me out of the ghetto. The first thing she did was to dye her black hair blonde so she would blend in better with the typical Polish population. She bought the identification papers of a young Polish Catholic woman who died, and she took on her name, and then she went to work. At first, she had some good jobs. She became an English governess or a French governess for children of wealthy Poles, because my mom learned English and French at the university. When these jobs ran out, she took anything she could, and that included being a cook, a maid, a scrub woman, whatever, as long as the job involved room and board in the apartment of the people who were hiring her, so that she wouldn't have to go out on the street to go back and forth to work, where she could be picked up by Nazi patrol or police. She also needed some cash to pay to the people who were keeping me. So my mom survived by luck, strength, and wits. I survived by luck only, and I'll give you an example of my luck. One of the first families with whom I lived, Polish families, I remember I was sitting at a table eating soup. It was getting dark, and somebody was lighting a kerosene lamp on the table. And suddenly there was loud banging on the front door and loud shouts in German, and everybody rushed to the front door, but I didn't. I just kept sitting there eating. Why? Probably because I was hungry. I was hungry through most of the war years, but that was not unusual. And I kept sitting there eating until all of a sudden I sensed somebody was staring at me. I remember looking over to the side, and there was a Nazi soldier standing right next to me, staring down at me. I remember he had on a heavy dark green winter coat and a machine gun on his shoulder. And I remember staring at the machine gun because it fascinated me. And then I looked at him and I smiled. I don't know why. And I went back to eating my soup. He stood there another moment or two, and soon he left, and all the other soldiers left the apartment. All was quiet again. I learned after the war that had I shown any fear whatsoever, he would have made me drop my pants to see whether I was circumcised, because only Jews were circumcised in Poland at that time. And if that happened, I would have never reached my 5th birthday. luck. Another example. In August 1944, there was an uprising throughout Warsaw. That was about a year and a half after the ghetto uprising. And in August 44, I was at that time living with a family, Polish Catholic family headed by a man named Leon. And on the first day of the uprising, he loaded his family, his wife and little daughter and me on a pedal-powered rickshaw that he obtained somewhere. And we drove it out of the city on that rickshaw. And he told me that they were going to his cousin's farm. Once we got out of the city in the countryside, he finally stopped to rest. And I wandered away along a ditch that ran beside the road. And all of a sudden I saw lying there in the grass a dark blue object, kind of like a large potato, just lying there. So I picked it up. It felt cold and heavy like metal. I started playing with it and it had a shining ring on one end of it. I remember pulling on it and it came out in my hand. And just at that moment, Leon called that we were leaving. So I tossed the object over my head, with my shoulder like this, and it fell into the ditch. And I ran to the rickshaw. And just as I was scampering onto the rickshaw, the huge explosion where I had just been. That dark blue object was a German hand grenade. And had Leon called me a few seconds later, I wouldn't be here today also. Again, luck. The Warsaw Uprising lasted about 3-4 months. And at the end of it, this is what Warsaw looked like. It was a total ruin. I stayed with Leon and his family on the farm into January of 1945. And all of a sudden, my mom appeared there. I had not seen her for 6 months, so I didn't know when I would see her, or I really didn't know whether I would see her ever again. I was very, very happy, obviously. And about a week later, my mom woke me up, shook me awake when I was sleeping. She had tears in her eyes, and she said, "You are saved." And I didn't know what she meant. But she took my hand and pulled me out of bed and dragged me behind her to the main room in the farmhouse. And there were soldiers there, but they had olive uniforms, not the dark green ones of the Nazis. My mom bent down to me and said, "They're Russian. They're fighting the Nazis." And when the commander of the troops, it was a tank, when the tank commander saw me, he reached into his pocket and he took out a little white cube and he handed it to me like this. And I didn't know what it was. My mom said, "That's sugar, take it, taste it." Well, I put it in my mouth and it was absolutely the best taste I have ever had my whole life. And ever since then, I've had a tremendous sweet tooth. I can start dinner with dessert, have dessert as the main course, and end it with dessert. And I'd love to do it occasionally, except my wife, Mimi, who was sitting right there, she wouldn't let me. And she's probably right, as always. About a week later, I think, a week or two, we learned that the Russians have pushed the Nazis out of Warsaw. So we returned to Warsaw. My mom very quickly got a job with a brand new book publishing house that was started by the communist government to print books and propaganda. And her job was to open up bookstores throughout Poland that had been closed during the war. Here's a photograph of my mom and me in 1945, that summer. It was a very happy time for me because I thought my mom would never again send me away and have me living with strangers. Well, 2 years later, early 1949, so 4 years later, my mom was chosen by the Polish communist government to go to France to set up Polish bookstores in France for the Polish immigrant community to try to entice them back. And because there was no one left alive in our family, they either had a choice of sending both of us or none. So they allowed my mom to take me with her. And by the way, this is my mom and me in summer of 1949 in Paris. So I was at this point, I was 11 years old. And my mom that summer defected, went to the American embassy, applied for a visa to come to the US for herself and for me. Her visa came through later that summer, and in September she left to go back to come to the United States. My visa didn't, So once again, she found some strangers to leave me with. So she parked me with this couple living in Paris, and during the couple of months that I lived with them, I would wander all over Paris every day, ride the metro, walk everywhere, picked up French, street French, not proper French, but I could communicate. And then my visa eventually came through, and on the 1st of December, 1949, I came to the United States. I was 11 years old. Went to a small town in North Carolina, 1,000 population. I didn't speak a word of English. My mom right away put me into school, so I had to sink or swim, learn quickly, and she was right. I learned pretty quickly. So by the time we left North Carolina, about a year and a half later, I was fluent in English. We went to Oregon, and I went to 4 years to high school there. And in high school, my English really became fluent. I even lost most of my accent. I also started and lost a horrible, horrible stutter. And I got in high school, I learned about the American dream, that in America, if you are really want something in your life and are willing to work hard for it, you can get there despite or regardless of what your family background is. I learned it, and I really got to believe it. And I worked very hard in high school to get some good grades. And finally, my senior year, my math teacher advised me that I should apply to MIT for aeronautical engineering because I had a love of airplanes. Ever since that time in 1942 that you saw in the very first slide, the airplane that was flying overhead in the shed where I was hiding. Ever since that day, I loved airplanes. I've done a lot with airplanes. But that airplane flying free in that blue sky when I was constrained in a dark shed, that was the love. That was the first and the reason for my first love with airplanes. I met my very first Holocaust denier at MIT when I was a freshman in 1955, and I was shocked and disturbed by by his attitude or her attitude. And that stayed with me until 6 years ago when I viewed the documentary film Paperclips. Almost immediately, I realized that my story has value, so I wrote a book, Neither Yesterdays Nor Tomorrows. And I thought I was done. I put the book immediately on a free access website so anybody could read it and print it on their computer for free, but I thought I was done with that. Except that I almost immediately got a call from the head of MIT, Hillel, asking me to come to Boston and to speak on April 10th, 2010. That was the Holocaust Remembrance Day, and they were arranging an event at the Boston Holocaust Memorial, downtown Boston. My first reaction was, hell no, I didn't bargain for this. But I thought about it, and I decided, okay, I'll do it. So I went to Boston, I spoke. I would choke at least half a dozen times. But enough people came up to me afterwards and said, you got to keep doing this. So right after that, we returned home. Mimi and I returned home to San Francisco. And I almost immediately learned about the Holocaust Center from my good friend, Richard Gumpert, who was sitting right there. And I learned about the center's education program that's focused on students who are old enough to understand, yet young enough to still have an open mind. And I decided to start speaking in high schools and middle schools. My very first 2 talks were arranged by the Holocaust Center in October of 2010, one in Seattle and one in Tacoma. And they both were eye-openers for me. First, because I was amazed at the openness and the sensitivity of the kids. Sensitivity to both my story and towards themselves. And also, they were very much open in their feelings to the letters that they started sending me afterwards. The second thing that really impressed me was the dedication and inspiration of the teachers that created these kind of emotions in the students. 2 years later, I met Michael and Danielle the first time that I spoke at the Kent Mountain View Academy. And in the 5 years since my very first talks here in Seattle, I've spoken to student groups ranging from 30 to 300 or 400. I've spoken about 90 different venues on both coasts of the US and also in Poland to about 6 different schools. And after most of these talks, I get a pack of letters. It always amazes me how much sensitivity and understanding there is in the students' letters and their openness, and how much they relate to my story. They always find something that relates to their life, to what I tell them. Instead of just filing these letters, I wanted to share it somehow with others. So my wife, Mimi, and I started taking excerpts that were memorable from them and putting them on my website. When the number of excerpts on the website grew to a huge number, because I probably have received several hundred, maybe 1,000 letters by now. So when the number of excerpts got very, very large, we chose the most meaningful and most sensitive and heartfelt of those excerpts, and we put them into a book. My second book, Yesterday's Revisited. And I'll share with you right now 2 of those excerpts, one from a student and one from a teacher. But I hope that you will read either the excerpts on my website or in my book to see the reaction that these talks produce in students and the impact it has on them. This one is from a student. I was most affected by your statement that as human beings, we need to stand for something, not against something. All too often, we think of things that divide us and make us different, not the things that bind us together. And your words encourage us to take positive action, just like one of the 3 items of the center. And here's one from the teacher. This was a teacher education program that I participated in. She writes, I give you here a small piece of what I've taken from your story. 1, motivated me to be a better person. 2, inspired me to see the story behind the person. 3, rekindled my passion for teaching history and people. 4, gained confidence to teach what I think is valuable. 5, gave me courage to speak up. And 6, encouraged me to hug my kids. I love that. I review these excerpts every once in a while for myself, to remind myself why I do this. Because every time I speak to a class, it's much longer than this, and I always still choke. And my answer to myself is, I do this because I make a difference. And I thank the Holocaust Center for helping me make that difference. And that's why I support them, and that's why I continue and I increase my support. So I hope you do too. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming today.
We really couldn't have done it without you.
Thank you.